Today is the 9th day of Tammuz, the Yortzeit of the Tzanz Kloisenberger Rebbe.
That's right.
Who was a tremendous. It's today.
I thought it was 3 days. No,
it's
it's
ninth.
6 days after.
And he was the.
You had a thing.
He was a survivor from Auschwitz, and
yes, it was great.
and he came back. He lost 10 children there, and he came back. After he survived, he had, I think, 3 or 4 more. He married again. He had 3 or 4 more children, and he was one of the biggest builders in Eretz Yisrael. He's a tremendous thing. He built a whole hospital.
You know, he was dying of whatever it was, with the horrible diseases in the camps. He was knows that and he said, "Hashem, if you save me, I'll build a hospital in Israel." At that point, he did.
He did, and anyway, so today's is Yortzeit. It was also tremendous Talmud Chacham, tremendous, and has a long series of books for him called, I think, Avodas, either Avodat Tama or Avodas Avoda. I don't remember what they were called. It's always for Brengen, the same way that the Rebbe has. So they documented almost everything he said. Okay, and today's also the 15th of July. So we are in the middle of chapter 7, and I wanted to augment a little what we said yesterday. Why Chassidus didn't go so much for the Kabbalistic intentions. We said that the mindset now has changed, and people don't, day to day, they don't think along these lines of protocol and having everything exactly right. So then when we finished and I had time to think, so I said, but we're very used to this actually with bureaucracy. And one of the most frustrating things in bureaucracy, if we want to understand how the names have to match up with what you're doing. So in bureaucracy we have this thing that you send, you fill a form out, and they come and tell you this is the wrong form. But it has all the information, what do you want? It's the wrong form, it's not the right one. That's sort of like this idea that if you're minded this way, if you're bureaucratically minded, then that's the way you see these things. You see that everything has to be exactly in place and so on. And Chassidus, you can tell the fact that we don't wear ties, and right, in America they do. The Rebbe had a long fight with the Chassidim to get them to wear ties. In the beginning they didn't want to. It took I think 15 years for someone to finally put a tie on. And then it became, they realized if you want to be a rabbi in America, you have to wear a tie. It's not going to work otherwise. So there he was always very adamant. You should conduct yourself the way the locals do, and not try to stick to your guns about all the different things. The Rebbe, by the way, didn't have even a long kapota like this for Shabbos before he got married, before he became the Rebbe. He used to wear a short jacket. Yeah, and Shabbos also. And it was a very, very big thing by him that to blend in. And anyway, so that's the way to think about this. That you have to have the right form. Even if you have the right intent, you have the right. Your heart is in the right place. If you don't have the right form, it's not going to work. But we don't. It's very hard for a modern person. I hold by this still, that a modern person finds it very hard to think about heaven as some kind of bureaucracy. And we don't see it that way, especially with Chassidus, that everything is in the heart. So, but still, you have to study. At least you have to know this. I mean, even though most Chassidim don't use these Kabbalistic intentions, and the Alter Rebbe only put a few of them into his Siddur, but you should at least learn them, at least understand what it looks like, what a fully functioning, structured bureaucracy of heaven would look like, and how it works. And again, even though it turns people off today, but still to study it, that is definitely necessary. So that's a little bit of what we're doing here. Okay, and now. שאם אותו הדבר שמבקש מהמלך יעז ממש ביד המלך, הוא פועל בקל יותר, כגון שמבקש נדבה מהמלך בשעה שהמלך באוצרותיו. So he says, he gives us this parable. He says, if you want to ask the king for money, when should you do this? So he says you should do this exactly like the story you just you just told about Trump. You should do this when he's busy with his finances. So here he says when he goes into his treasury, and back then the treasury wasn't just numbers, it was actual gold, and he's dealing with it, and then you come to him or you send someone there, and he says, okay, you take from there whatever you want. It's a well-known thing that when you're counting large sums, you're willing to give it. So he says that this is the idea. So the king is in his treasury, and he's got all this gold and silver in front of him. It's much easier to ask him then for money than it is when he's doing something else. And this is one of the things that really differentiates between a smart child and a not so smart child. That the smart child knows when to ask and what to ask. You see that they wait for the right opportunity. It also shows a lot of character that you know how to, you have patience for it. So Kabbalistic intentions are a lot about that. They're a lot about waiting for the right moment, waiting for the right thing. But by the way, in Chassidus it's also the same. Even though it's not so bureaucratic, maybe it's not forms and exact, but still a person needs to know where they're standing. It's more the question of where am I standing, not just where the king is. It's more in Chassidus is a lot more sensitivity to what can I even ask for right now. So we have this whole thing that in Elul, the king is in the field. The whole idea of the king is in the field is very similar to this. That now he's in the field, he's out to greet everyone, he's a greet and meet. So that's the right time to talk to him about petty things, small things. And it's also the right time to approach him if you don't know him so well, because he's not following protocol, he's not in his throne room, none of that's going on. Even though when the king is busy with other things, he could divert his attention to you and focus on what you need, it's much harder. If it's such a case where he's dealing with something else and you want to ask him for money, so it better be, you better come with really big guns and people that he knows, and it makes it much harder. So when the king sees how, and here again it goes back to us, how intent you are in this and how much you need it and so on, he may be able to focus on you. But normally, the right time to do it is when he's anyway engaged in his treasury. But when he's in the treasury, he doesn't care so much. This guy came, that guy came. He doesn't start checking exactly who it is. He came with one of the ministers, okay, give him whatever he needs. That's what the sages meant when they said that Israel don't know how to use the right name when they daven, when they pray. He says if they would be sensitive to where the king is and what he's doing right now and so on. And again, it's kind of funny for a person to think about this. What do you mean? What's the king doing? So we have many maimarim, many sayings in the Talmud, especially in Maseches Brachos, that describe what the Eibishter, what God is doing every hour of the day, almost. And a lot of times people read these and they're like, huh? What do you think? God is like, he has to have a schedule, he has to... It's not given for that. It's not given for so that... This is like a sensitivity that people had. It's a leftover sensitivity to nature. Before Judaism, people were what we call today animists. So they had a very strong sensitivity to how nature runs itself and the hours in nature. When we became monotheists, we didn't give that up entirely. We understood that this was describing how God works. Even if you have sensitivity to nature, it's the same thing. There's certain work that's good to do before sunrise. There's certain work that's good to do in the second hour after sunrise. There's work that's good to do at 3 hours after sunrise, and so on. And that's how the sages describe this, except they describe it instead of the type of work that you're going to do. It was sort of like the openness in the heavens to what God is, as it were, preoccupied with. ויותר מהייתם דאמרן, ונמצא מובן שמאמר הז"ל אליו ולא מידותיו, אם עניין מכוון בשם לא סתר עד ידי כלל. So now we find that there's no problem, there's no contradiction between these two sayings from the sages. On the one hand, you should pray to him and not to his measures, meaning to his sfirot. And on the other hand, that you should be focused on the right name, because the name is always pertaining to God himself. It's just, what is he doing right now? How is he acting? What's the idea? And again, this is, there's so much in the Talmud about this, about how much sensitivity the early generations had, both to the state of their environment, what God was, were open to at the moment. Again, he's open to everything at any moment, but you've got to come with a really, you got to come out of yourself to be able to do that. And there's stuff that just goes naturally. This is actually very connected to our parsha, because that was Bilam, what he wanted to do. He wanted to get the exact moment when God is angry every day. There's a whole discussion about this in the Chinuch. In the Chinuch, he asks, what does this even mean? What do you mean God is angry every day? What's going on? So he says a very interesting thing. He says, take this explanation until he's very humble, the Chinuch. So he says, take this explanation until you find a better one. And he says, my explanation is that God is constantly weighing everything that's going on in the world. He feels it. He feels everything. He is everything. And every day, unfortunately, there's a lot of evil that's done in the world. And there's a certain moment in the day when he's just had enough. Just can't bear it anymore. The amount of evil he sees in the world. So he says, but he limits himself to be angry about it for one split moment. That's his greatness. That as much as he's bearing it, he says, but I'll only get angry at this moment, that's it. And after that, everything's cleansed. I'm not going to think about it anymore. By the way, which is a very good lesson for all of us, yes. How to conduct ourselves. You have to do a cheshbon at some point, but it should be like a split moment. And so Bilam, that was his greatness. He was a great animist. He was a prophet of animism. And he could tell when that moment was. Like he could tell how much evil was in the world. He felt the world crumbling, falling under the weight of the evil. And he said, this is the moment. And that's when he wanted to say his prophecy, and that way he could curse the Jewish people. But even that didn't work, because on those days, God decided, on these days I'm not going to get angry at all. Not even for a split moment. So that didn't work for him. But again, the point is that they were very conscious and sensitive to exactly where the world is at this moment. Now we said that there's dveikus and tefillah. If you remember, it says that just as he is compassionate, you should be compassionate. There we say you should cling to his measures, to his sfirot. So he says dveikus is something else. Clinging to him, mimicking him in behavior is something entirely different. Okay. It's not the same as praying to the sfirot, which is not allowed. To be davik, to cling, to equate yourself with this particular measure, this particular behavior of God, is a completely different proposition than praying to it.
Yes.
Shehu hanagat adam, because this is talking about human behavior, how you behave ima briot with other people. It's got nothing to do with God. Even when we talk about learning Torah, we say there we are clinging to God's wisdom. We're even becoming one with His wisdom. So there, it's something else. Again, it's to equate myself with this sphera. It's to become like this, to behave this way with others, to align my mind with His sphera of wisdom, and so on. Another thing we need to say about to him and not to his measures, meaning that we only pray to his essence itself. And this is why Kriyas Shema comes before Tefillah. Remember, this was the question we started with.
Yes.
A long time ago, 2 weeks ago. Why does Kriyas Shema come before davening? Because the whole point of Kriyas Shema is to connect to God as He is before the Tzimtzum, before this world is created. The whole point of covering the eyes is to negate the world. So we're not talking at all about Hashem as He enclosed Himself within the Sfirot, within the measures. He says this might also be the intent that a person should have when he begins to daven. He says, "Blessed are you, Hashem, Baruch Ata Hashem." The ata, what does it mean? Baruch Ata, blessed are you. Who is you here? This is His essence Himself. When I say blessed are you, it's like I'm standing in front of Him. It's like I'm addressing the King. It's to Him Himself. It's not to any of the advisors. It's not, like we said, you're not even allowed to make a gesture with your finger. You're only focused on Hashem. This is all the way that Hashem is before He enclosed Himself within the measures, within the sfirot. And even here we don't use any name. We say Baruch Ata, even before we say Yod Kei Vav Kei. Say Ata, you. There's no name there. That's what we said, that Hashem's very essence has no name at all. The Nochach, He's present in front of me, or I'm present in front of Him. And then when you say Hashem, Baruch Ata Hashem, the Hashem is already some enclothement. Even though it's a special name because it's considered to be the essential name. Sham Hashem Havaya Benikud Patach Bechokma V'Tzarei Bebina, and then in each one of the brachos, like I told you, that there's a kavana of which exactly Yud Kei Vav Kei you do. So this is the end of chapter 7. God willing, we'll start tomorrow with chapter 8.